Super Mario 64 is one of the best-selling video games ever made. Released for the Nintendo 64 on June 23, 1996, it debuted in Japan on the 23rd, and later in North America on September 29th. Being one of the launch titles for the Nintendo 64 console, Super Mario 64 was a gaming revolution to say the least. The console literally introduced a whole new dimension into the playing field and forever changed the course of gaming. So let's talk about the game's Iceberg. This is the ultimate Super Mario 64 Iceberg. Created by Reddit user ShadowNX720, this is honestly the biggest iceberg I've seen for Super Mario 64 that isn't complete nonsense. Now, if you aren't familiar with the iceberg format, this is how it works. The way an iceberg works is that the farther you go down in the tiers, the more obscure and unknown the material on the iceberg is. So for example, things like backwards long jumping would be at the very top, and absolutely crazy and unheard of things would be at the very bottom. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's probably going to be some entries that I leave out of the video because I assume that everybody already knows about them. Like, I don't think I need to mention that you can beat the game with 120 stars. Another thing to keep note of is that the green submissions are the ones that only exist in the DS version of Super Mario 64. I'm also going to be including a confidence meter in the bottom left, ranging from 0 to 5, with 5 being me being very confident in what I'm talking about, and then 0 having absolutely no idea how accurate my explanation really is. This video is going to split the different sections of the iceberg into video chapters to keep the video nicely organized throughout. Have an interesting entry not included on the list? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, let's begin. Every copy of Super Mario 64 is personalized. There have been many videos made about this phenomenon, and believe it or not, it does have some truth to it. A vast portion of it is creepypasta material, but the portion of it that isn't a creepypasta refers more to the fact that Nintendo's experimental AI adapts and creates a slightly altered version of the game tailored to the specific owner's copy. Unfortunately though, this Nintendo experimental AI isn't actually real, and this creepypasta is nothing more than fiction. It really does feel like it though. Copy sold for $1.5 million. As you could probably guess, there was a copy of Super Mario 64 sold for $1.5 million. On July 12, 2021, an ultra-rare first edition copy of Super Mario 64 sold at an auction for an astonishing $1.56 million. This copy of the game is so valuable because, for one, it was the first ever print of the game, and secondly, it has never been opened and never played. This copy is probably the closest thing you could get to a perfect copy of Super Mario 64. Every SM64 review is the same. I really don't know what this entry is about. I looked pretty hard, but if I were to guess, I'm going to assume that it's probably some niche copypasta or something, but that's really as far as my knowledge goes. The A Button Challenge. The A Button Challenge is one of the most insane and legendary gaming challenges to ever come out of a game, and on paper, the challenge is fairly simple. You have to beat Super Mario 64 without pressing the A button at all. Not even once. Bismuth has been documenting this challenge for over a year now, and he has since uploaded a full collection of all of the 8 parts combined, and the full video is over 5 hours in length. It is seriously honorable work, but I don't have the time to talk about one entry in the whole video, so we need to keep going. Eternal Star. I'm also not entirely sure about what this entry could be referring to, but it might be this short film called Eternal Star. Uploaded in August of 2020, the video is a short film centered around the statue in the courtyard, where Mario gives the statue a green star, I guess, and then Luigi comes out of it and pretty much knocks Mario out cold. There's a good chance that this could more likely be referring to a specific star in the game or something, but I couldn't find anything else about it. Hey guys, I'm currently editing this right now, and I just now realized that this is what Eternal Star actually means. So yeah, please ignore that last random ass short film. References in Mario Odyssey. There is a lot of references to Super Mario 64 all throughout Super Mario Odyssey. From entering paintings to literally having the castle's courtyard in the game, there's well over 25 different individual nods to Super Mario 64 throughout Super Mario Odyssey. Some of them are basic connections, like finding Yoshi on the castle roof, and some of them are pretty obscure, like Bowser's memories in the game of his encounters with Mario way back in Super Mario 64. Some of these aren't really references more than they are reoccurring characters in the Mario franchise, like Peach's castle itself, but you get the idea. GigaLeak content. From March of 2018 all the way to July of 2020, 10 main sets of data from Nintendo were leaked all over websites like 4chan. The term GigaLeak mainly refers to the second leak on July 24th, which was 3 gigabytes in size. The leaks are believed to be from companies contracted by Nintendo in the design of the consoles, but there's nothing really confirming this. The sheer size of the leak is absolutely massive and later led to some pretty insane discoveries, but we'll talk about that later on. L is Real 2401. You can't really cover obscure Mario content without covering this. Over 24 years after Super Mario 64's release, the mystery behind this infamous sign in the courtyard finally became a solved case, and it's all in the name of the entry. L is Real 2401 is legendary. It really was the biggest mystery surrounding Super Mario 64, and for a very long time, it was the ultimate grounds for speculation and myth. But due to the GigaLeak that I mentioned earlier, the community was finally able to have a definitive conclusion to the myth. And it actually turned out to be true. Luigi was not only found in the beta leak for the game, but there were also uncompressed voice lines from Luigi as well as many other characters. Take a listen.
That's delicious. Oh, mamma mia.
Star Road. Not really all that sure why this is on the list, but Star Road is a really popular ROM hack for Super Mario 64 created by Skellex. Released in December of 2011 in the form of a release trailer, the ROM hack featured a whole new playing experience as well as 130 stars as opposed to the original game's 120. The task for Star Road is also really fun to watch. Last Impact. Last Impact is another ROM hack for Super Mario 64, created by Kaze Emmanuar in September of 2016. The ROM contains 130 stars, technically 131, but the last star doesn't actually raise your star count, 12 power-ups, and Mario only has 6 health as opposed to 8. The ROM borrows several different aspects of the Super Mario Galaxy games, mostly noticeable with the power-ups. There's many other interesting things about Last Impact, but I'm going to move on for the sake of time. Yoshi after 120 stars. I sort of mentioned this earlier, but in Super Mario 64, after collecting all of the 120 stars, you can use the cannon outside of the castle to shoot yourself up to the castle roof. And when you get up there, the player will be greeted by none other than Yoshi. And after talking with him, he then jumps off the castle and is never seen again in the game. Lego block set. This entry is referring to the question block Lego set that was released in 2021, and it's actually a pretty cool Lego set. It features a couple of the worlds from Super Mario 64, even including Peach's castle. The castle is even complete with an interior, even though it's rather tiny. I used to love Legos as a kid, so maybe there's a chance that I'll get around to buying this sometime. 3D All-Stars controversy. On September 18th, 2020, Nintendo released Super Mario 3D All-Stars to the Nintendo Switch. It commemorates the 35th anniversary of the Super Mario franchise, but a lot of people weren't really all that happy with it, and as you could imagine, it sparked a short-lived controversy. Nintendo changed the ported titles, and the most controversial change was that for Super Mario 64, they removed the backwards long jump, making the trick impossible. And as said by King K, here are the biggest complaints related to Mario 64.
No widescreen, audio delay. It's using the patched version, which means there's no backwards long jump and So Long Gay Bowser is out. There's an awful screen smoothing effect that you can't turn off, especially noticeable with the UI and text. And don't you come crying to me about preservation. There is nothing about this collection that screams to me that the goal was about preservation. Nothing.
Sparkling triple jump. I mentioned earlier how if you got all of the stars and went to the castle roof, that you could talk to Yoshi. Well, something I purposefully didn't mention is that after talking to Yoshi, Mario obtains a sparkling triple jump. During the effect, Mario is invincible for the entire duration of the jump when the sparks are present. Royal Raceway. Royal Raceway is a track in Mario Kart 64 that nods to Peach's castle from Super Mario 64. The track unfortunately doesn't go inside of the castle, like with tracks like Bowser's Castle, but it's still a nice little reference. All you can really do here is drive around the area. 0 and 1 star. This is just alluding to the already well-known fact that you can, in fact, beat Super Mario 64 with 0 and 1 star respectively. There's another entry on this list called 16 star that I'm going to assume points out that you can also beat the game with 16 stars, so I'm going to combine these together. Luigi's Casino. Luigi's Casino is a mini-game from Super Mario 64 DS where you can play inside of Luigi's seemingly existent casino. I say seemingly because it's actually a rather obscure fake location. People within the community really wanted to know whether or not this casino was not only an extensive location, but if it was accessible in the game. But as it turns out, it's rather disappointing, but not all that surprising either. The casino that is seen in the background of the minigame is quite literally the entire map. There's nothing beyond it, but it does make sense when you realize that Nintendo probably didn't want to waste resources on a full area that the player would never see. Somebody did eventually create a playable version of the casino with a mod created by Halebot in February of 2018, but that's pretty much it for this one. Backwards long jump. It's literally just a backwards long jump. I don't think that this is on the list for no reason though, because it's likely that Nintendo knew about the backwards long jump far before anyone else did, but the first documented case of people discovering it was in the Spanish version of the November 2000 issue of the Nintendo Power magazine. But Nintendo probably did know about it, considering that in 1997, an updated version was released in Japan, which made backwards long jumps impossible. So Long, Gay Bowser. This was briefly mentioned earlier from King K's video about 3D All-Stars, but not only is this a huge meme in the Super Mario 64 community, but for a long time, people actually didn't know what exactly Mario was trying to say. It was later confirmed by Charles Martinet himself with a tweet that the line was actually, "So long, King of Bowser." The unsettling nature of Super Mario 64. Super Mario 64 is a generally unsettling game at times. This is mainly due to the game's design, as well as the game's aesthetic as a retro game. A lot of the stigmatism can be attributed to the limitations that Nintendo had to do when developing the game, but to put it simple, the unsettling nature that can make Super Mario 64 terrifying is really down to the aesthetics, hardware limitations, enemies, and the graphics. Press Start to Continue made a really good video about this very topic, and I highly suggest you go watch it. Return to Yoshi's Island. Return to Yoshi's Island is a rather recent ROM hack created by K's Emanuar. Published in 2021, this is a seriously amazing ROM. As far as I know though, the game is still currently in a public demo release, and the mod itself isn't fully finished yet, but this is one of the few ROM hacks that I've seen that actually manages to run really well on an actual Nintendo 64, as well as running in an emulator.
Real N64, perfectly fine. I tested all of this and it runs perfectly. As you can see, this is the game running on Real N64.
Purple prizes. In 2005, DeviantArt user King Bowser Koopa posted an image scan of an article titled Purple Prizes, and named the submission Waluigi in Super Mario 64 DS. The article suggests that Waluigi could be unlocked in the game and provides various hints towards unlocking the character. The article is really well made, and it did manage to convince quite a lot of people that there might be a chance that Waluigi could exist in the game. What really sells it for me though are the 3D models used of Waluigi to up the realism of the article. Only 2 days after posting the image, however, King Bowser Koopa revealed that the image was just an April Fool's joke. And that concludes Tier 1. Mystery Goomba. On April 4th of 2014, Panenkoic 2012 noticed that something was off about the enemy count when going into Bowser in the Sky. He noticed that Bowser in the Sky loads more objects than seems to be visible in the stage, and in this case, there's actually a third Goomba on a platform that spawns on the death barrier when entering the stage, making the Goomba spawn far below the map. This missing Goomba case only took Panenkoic 2 days to solve, with him making a follow-up video on the 6th of April. Panenkoic's video on this goes more in depth on the technicality of this than I'm going to do here. 121st star. Now, it sounds crazy, but there actually is, in fact, 121 stars in Super Mario 64. On February 8th, 2020, SwankyBox uploaded a video showcasing an extra star he had found inside of the slide on Cool Cool Mountain. The star seemed to have all resembling properties of a star, and this was a really big deal, but it was unfortunately not a real star. Swanky ended up making an update video on this, and it turns out that the star not existing was due to him using an outdated level editor called Toadstool 64. The issue was mainly due to him extending the level boundaries, which with Toadstool 64 would cause some of the code in the game to break. And in turn, this fake 121st star showed up in the slide on Cool Cool Mountain. SGI content. Super Mario 64 utilizes SGI content within things like the cover art for the game. SGI stands for Silicon Graphics, and Silicon Graphics are what's responsible for the incredible cover art for the game that never ended up making it into gameplay for pretty obvious reasons. I'm guessing that this refers to not only the SGI content itself, but also fan-made videos showcasing what the game would look like with an SGI-based Mario, as well as mods to actually play as Silicon Graphics Mario. It's honestly pretty unsettling, but it's also pretty interesting at the same time. Super Mario 64 2. Super Mario 64 2 was a sequel to Super Mario 64 that was planned to release in 1999, but never ended up making it past the development process. It was planned to release on the Nintendo 64 DD, which was a real Nintendo 64 console that included a disk drive, and little to nothing is known about its gameplay. The game was apparently planned to have Luigi and even multiplayer, but this ended up failing pretty badly, as well as the console that it was planned to be on. Hanging beneath Bob Bridge. In Bob on Battlefield, Mario is able to hang under the bridge near the spawn point of the stage. It's thought to be a glitch, and it probably is, and this video that I found from April 2009 shows off this extremely simple trick. Bowser's Dank Rave. Bowser's Dank Rave is a mini meme hack created by PyRDie1 in March of 2016. Popularized by people like Simple Flips, this was the first ROM in an ongoing series by PyRDie, and arguably the biggest change is that Mario gets replaced with Rosalina. The original image for the ROM is also pretty questionable. Level Select. The Level Select screen is a secret screen used by the devs during the game's development, and the selection screen can be accessed through a cheat code. This screen features an early logo for the game, as well as originally having 32 planned stages for the game. That's more than double the 15 levels that made it into the final game. Cannonless. Cannonless is an iconic speedrunning trick which involves skipping the cannon step in the star, blast away the wall. Normally, Mario would go inside of this cannon and shoot the corner of the wall away to collect the star, but this can be skipped by just running at the wall and hoping that Mario grabs the ledge. This trick is notorious for being the biggest run killer imaginable in speedrunning, and there's literally no way to get it consistently unless you do alignment setups. As shown with this hitbox demonstration, the reason Mario is even able to grab the star at all is because when Mario is grabbing a ledge, it puts his hitbox above the ledge, making him instantly grab the star. Who's filming Lakitu? That's a really good question. I have no idea. I'm guessing that this is some sort of speculatory topic because it does seem like grounds for an interesting theory, but I can say for certain that the Lakitu that we do see does have a purpose in the game, and that's to keep track of Mario's star count. But as for who's filming the Lakitu that's filming Mario, I have absolutely no clue. Game Over screen. The Game Over screen in Super Mario 64 can be a bit unsettling sometimes, and I think that this entry refers to not only its fairly creepy nature, but also that getting a game over in Super Mario 64 doesn't actually have any real consequences. The screen goes from having a red background with Mario's eyes spinning around, right back to a cheery blue background, as if nothing happened. Bugged fire texture. When Mario gets burned, this fire texture appears behind him. The reason it looks the way it does is because the fire texture when Mario gets burned is actually a mistake in the game's code. And in March of 2020, Zoinknoise made a patch for this by fixing the coding mistake. The intended texture was meant to look like this. Haunted dirt texture. People in the Mario 64 community claim to see a face inside of this dirt texture as well as this other texture. Whether or not there's actually faces in these is obviously subjective, but something that is cooler than that is that a YouTuber named Phantomel actually managed to find the original source image for this dirt texture. But as for the faces, there's seriously nothing there, and this is just a case of our pattern-loving brains finding faces in things even as silly as a dirt texture. Broken paintings. If you've ever played Super Mario 64, you've probably noticed that a lot of the paintings for the game's worlds appear multiple times throughout the castle. And if you try to go inside of the duplicates, they appear to be broken. This, unsurprisingly, has bred some creepypasta material, but I think that the actual reason for duplicate paintings is due to Nintendo being clever and saving resources by just putting the same painting somewhere else. Test maps. The test map for Super Mario 64 DS is a really cool unused map hidden within the game files. This map has no real purpose other than for the developers to test warps, objects, collision data, and general game testing. This map, with the nature of the DS version, is seriously cool though. Ghosts don't die. In Big Boo's Haunt, on the first star, Go on a Ghost Hunt, whenever Mario kills a ghost, Big Boo delivers the message, "Ghosts don't die. Can you get out of here alive?" Blarg. Blarg has appeared several times throughout other Mario games, most well known for his appearance in Super Mario World. Blarg was planned to be in Super Mario 64, but the enemy unfortunately never made it out of the beta stage of development. An unfinished model of Blarg can be found in the game files, and this is footage of what he looks like in-game by forcing him to appear using a cheat code. Blarg was planned to be in Lethal Lava Land, Bowser in the Fire Sea, and Mario Over the Rainbow. Half A-Press. Half A-Presses were introduced by the A-Button Challenge by Panenkoek, and the term is usually only applied to the A-Button Challenge itself. This can be easily confusing for people, but I'll try and give a competent explanation. The term half A-Press refers to when Mario enters a stage while holding down the A button, allowing for a myriad of moves to be performed from the get-go without requiring the pressing of A while in the stage. The act of holding out a previous required A button press during the subsequent entrance of another stage or mission and maintaining it throughout the stage until a certain point or until the collection of a star can be really important. When holding down A, whether the A button was pressed before entering the stage or during the duration of the stage, the player is able to perform short kicks, swim in water instead of performing broad strokes, and is able to spin in the air. If you want a more detailed explanation of just exactly how this works, Panenkoek has made a wonderful explanation video for the star Watch for Rolling Rocks using the half A-Press. Big Bob-omb is nothing but a big dud now. In Bob-omb Battlefield, after defeating King Bob-omb, if you go and talk to the Bob-omb buddy, he will tell you that Big Bob-omb is nothing but a big dud now. Another interesting detail is that after defeating King Bob-omb, the ball pit then contains 3 bowling balls instead of the previous 2. The Bowser Room. The Bowser Room is a small, hidden room in Super Mario 64. The room is possible to get to by BLJing into a hidden warp above the waterfall outside of the castle, and when performed exactly like this, it takes you to this room. Except, this room isn't actually real. The image of the room that most people are familiar with was started by Chris from Oni Plays in June of 2017, when he mentioned it in a Let's Play video of Crash Bandicoot Warped with his friends.
Well, I saw your fake Mario 64 hoax where he was just in a room looking up.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
How did you see that?
You sent it to me.
When?
You sent it to me like a year ago.
Whoa!
He's just looking through the window with Bowser's at the window.
I printed that out and I brought it to school and I said, "Look, it's real." I can't believe I sent you that.
Casares Misconception. Wet Dry World already has a rather interesting aesthetic, But the stage's skybox raises even more questions about the stage. And one of those questions was what location the skybox was actually from. People originally thought that the skybox was located in Casares, in Spain, and things like this now deleted tweet from Super Mario Broth is part of where this misconception came from. Wet Dry World's skybox is actually located in Shabam, in Yemen, and this is the original image for the skybox. Yellow cap switch. The yellow cap switch is an unused object found inside of the game files. The finished game only contains 3 switches, which are the wing cap, metal cap, and vanish cap. According to the decompilation of Super Mario 64, the blocks that the yellow cap switch would have activated were intended to give Mario a Koopa shell if it had made it into the final game. Bowser broke the door. The door into the castle's courtyard is bricked up, as well as everything around the courtyard, as if it was broken through and then later patched up using bricks. This has led people to assume that Bowser could have broken into the castle through the back door in the courtyard and then just patched it up to fix it when he was already inside. But viewing this from another angle kind of makes this theory completely fall apart in my opinion. I think that it's just a purposeful creative decision from Nintendo to include bricks here so that the courtyard is maintained in a closed space. Though the bricks on the door itself is an interesting decision from Nintendo. Jolly Roger Bay Fog. In Jolly Roger Bay, the first time you enter the stage to complete the first star, the stage has noticeable fog in the distance as well as blanket fog going over the water. But after you exit the stage by completing the star, the fog literally disappears forever. Even if you replay the first star again, the fog just doesn't come back. The only way to get it to come back is if you start an entirely new save file. Nobody really knows for sure why Nintendo made it this way, but it's thought to be related to the idea of ghosts being connected to pirate ships. And if intentional, this is a really strange detail. Other Lakitu Bro. Just like with the earlier entry, Who's Filming Lakitu, I have no idea what this is referring to. I couldn't find a single thing about a second Lakitu brother in Super Mario 64, and I'm fairly certain that this is just a nod to the Lakitu enemy being the other Lakitu brother, because what the hell else would this be? During my research of this entry, what I did find was a video from Yoshi Electron from February of 2008 showing off a way to actually play as Lakitu by using a GameShark code, and it's just as funny as you would expect. Chief Chili Yoshi Dialogue. Normally in Super Mario 64 DS, it is not possible to enter the Chief Chili Challenge course using Yoshi. Try saying that 3 times. But if you do it anyway using cheats, you'll find that Chief Chili has special unused dialogue for Yoshi being inside of the course. It's uncertain why Nintendo cut this out of the final game. Parallel Worlds. This is actually supposed to be Parallel Universe, and this is mainly reserved for task-related things like 0 and half Apress runs, and if you want a far better explanation of this, Panenkoic once again has just a great explanation of it, but I'm going to simplify mine for the sake of the video. A parallel universe is an area in any map of Super Mario 64 in which the game creates copies of the geometry way outside of the level's boundaries. The player would normally never ever reach a parallel universe in casual gameplay. This is once again a very simplified description, but it gets way more complicated than just some geometry outside of the map. Big Boo's Secret Laugh. In Big Boo's Haunt, Big Boo has an incredibly rare chance to play a slowed down version of his normal laughter, and it's pretty terrifying to hear. The chance of his secret laughter playing is probably close to 0, and of all the years I've spent playing Super Mario 64, I've never noticed this while playing. Not even once. This is what it sounds like. It That Really You? This is a callback to finding Yoshi on the roof of the castle after collecting all the stars, in which Yoshi's first lines are, "Mario, it that really you?" This is a pretty embarrassing spelling mistake, but in Nintendo's fairness, there's really no other mistakes like this in the game. Please walk quietly in the hallway. In the hallway upstairs in the castle, there's a sign that reads, "Please walk quietly in the hallway." I don't think that the developers had any intentions of making the sign sound as ominous as it does, but I think it has something to do with the unsettling nature of the game that I talked about earlier, combined with such an ambiguous statement. Moto's Man. Much like with Blarg, Moto's Man is another enemy that was found in the game files due to the Nintendo Gigaleak. Moto's Man doesn't appear to be in any other Mario game, and his existence never made it past the beta stage of the game. This is what he looks like when you force him into the game using cheats. SMB3's World 4 is Tiny Huge Island. This entry pretty much explains itself. In World 4 of Super Mario Bros. 3, Mario can go into pipes and have the world size change, just like with Tiny Huge Island from Super Mario 64. Due to this similarity, people have speculated that these two worlds could be connected, but I think that Nintendo just reused an idea that they already used in a previous Mario game. White Rabbits. One of Mario 64 DS's secret stars is a star in which Yoshi has to collect 8 white rabbits, and upon collecting them all, the player receives one of the game's secret stars. There's not much more to this one. Mario 64 is Freemason Initiation. Super Mario 64 is a Freemasonic and Illuminist digital ritual. The game begins in this Masonic hall. There is the checkerboard floor, symbolic of the world of polarized opposites, the physical world on which the ritual is based. The coins in this game are actually pinnacles. They are the coins from tarot and occult symbolism. In this game, you play the role of a Mercury-type character traveling into the Earth and between the realms. The first map is I think you get the idea. This rather nonsensical theory is a monstrous copypasta with an origin that I can't really pinpoint. The repost thread on Twitter is literally 70 tweets long, so I'll leave a link to it in the description if you're seriously curious enough to read it. Ghoul Medal. The Ghoul Medal is an anomalous collectible item that can appear in Super Mario 64. It is often described as a token of sorts, usually with a boo or a skeleton engraving on it. This medal was believed to exist due to a sign found in Big Boo's haunt that says, "You don't stand a ghost of a chance in this house. If you walk out of here, you deserve a Ghoul Medal." Some personalized copies have a Ghoul Medal as an unlockable item, and when collected, it usually displays the animation when the player grabs a key. The one issue with this item, though, is that none of that is real. The Ghoul Medal isn't a real item in the game. The phrase Ghoul Medal is just a play on the words gold medal. It's literally not any deeper than that. Toad's literally trapped inside the walls. Toad has multiple instances of dialogue that allude to Peach, as well as almost everyone else being trapped inside of the castle walls. This is mentioned several times throughout the game, and it's always been grounds for speculation as to if there could really be anything inside of the castle's walls. This theory also connects the stained glass window of Peach to being a place where Peach could have been inside of during the entire game. The analysis claims that there's at least 20 feet of space between the two windows, but it's probably just down to the game's design more than anything. Delicious Cake. When you complete Super Mario 64, in the ending credits with Peach, she says,
"Let's make a delicious cake for Mario."
Another thing this could also be referencing is a creepypasta with the same name, but I'm pretty sure this is a reference to the dialogue at the end of the game. Space World 95 Demo. Space World was an annual video game trade show hosted by Nintendo from 1989 to 2001. On November 24th, 1995, Nintendo unveiled the Nintendo 64 console at the 7th annual Shoshinkai Software Exhibition, also known as Space World. Also present at the convention was a demo of Super Mario 64, which was about 50% complete at the time. There's also a creepypasta that surrounds this demo with the same name, but the version shown off at Space World in 1995 is 100% real. And wherever these copies are, let's hope that they're being rightfully preserved. Womp King's remains become the tower. This one is obviously another conspiracy, but it just doesn't really hold a lot of weight. Yes, after defeating Womp King, the fortress does receive a tower in the later stars, but the idea of Womp King's remains being able to build a tower far bigger than him is just flat out wrong. The only argument that could really be made here is the remains being used for the foundation, but that's literally it. Killing Koopa the Quick. It is actually possible to kill Koopa the Quick, but it's probably not what you think. In Tiny Huge Island, Koopa the Quick can be raced just like in Bob on Battlefield to collect a star off of him after winning the race. But if you become huge by going through one of the pipes and then revisit his location, he becomes way smaller than Mario and can actually be crushed just like a normal Koopa. It is worth noting that this specific Koopa doesn't actually spawn a shell when you try to kill him. Kaze Emanuar. We've already talked about him, but Kaze is a well-known ROM hacker from Germany responsible for ROMs like Last Impact, Return to Yoshi's Island, and many more amazing maps. He's also responsible for mods like Portal 64 and Super Mario 64 Online. 120 has spiritual significance. This one is honestly just a really random connection that can be made with almost any number it seems, but since 120 is in fact a number, it is accompanied by something called an angel number. Now I'm not super religious, but according to Pinterest, angel number 120 says that you have to be ready to grow out of your comfort zone and lose traits that would otherwise hinder your growth. Yeah, I'll get right on that. I find it funny that you get other descriptions for the same number literally numerous times, but let's move on. Bowser got into the castle with his sub. There's a pretty well-known conspiracy theory within the Mario 64 community that talks about how Bowser could have gotten into the castle through his sub in Dire Dire Docks. This is one of the few theories so far that actually seems like it can make sense, so it's pretty interesting to think about. Gay Baby Jail. Stay with me here. In July of 2017, Simple Flips was playing a ROM hack called Super Mario XD when he somehow managed to get stuck inside of a rock. The chat then started to relentlessly spam the phrase gay baby jail, and that is what coined this extremely weird phrase.
Gay baby jail? How do I get up there?
L is real in Ocarina of Time. In The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, the same L is real plaque from Super Mario 64 can also be seen in this game as well. This is just another case of Nintendo reusing already existing textures to save time in development. TJ Henry Yoshi. TJ Henry Yoshi gained some attention in January of 2016 when he posted a comment on Panenkoic's pole jumping for red coins half A press video, challenging his notation on the half A press itself. What made Henry Yoshi get even more attention is when Panenkoic poked fun at him by talking about his comment early on in his Watch for Rolling Rocks half A press commentary, as well as showing it on screen before fully explaining his notation.
Now hold on, I know what you're thinking. An A press is an A press. You can't say it's only a half. Well, TJ Henry Yoshi, hear me out.
TJ later made a video challenging Simple Flips to a Mario 64 race, and then later competed with various other YouTubers in other things like racing for 120 stars. Kicking Klepto. Klepto is the name of the bird enemy that appears in Shifting Sandland, but as for kicking him, I don't really know what this entry could mean. There is a chance in the game where Klepto can take Mario's cap, and in order to get it back, you have to attack him, but when you jump to get it back, you aren't really kicking him. Maybe this is a more literal sense of the word, where you can kick Klepto, but I'm not really seeing any leads here. Duplicating Mario's hat. Discovered by Panenkoic in July of 2013, he found out that if you leave Mario's cap on the ground, and then teleport using the secret locations, when you come back to check on the hat, there will be a second one right in the same place as the first one. You can do this over and over as many times as you want, as Panenkoic demonstrates, but if you decide you want to pick all of the hats back up, they sadly don't duplicate on Mario's head. Panenkoic goes a little further into the fundamentals of this glitch, but you should totally try it out yourself. Rainbow Rides Village. In Super Smash Bros. Melee, there is a village on a hill in the background of the Rainbow Ride stage. Nicknamed Rainbow Village, people have attempted to form connections between this village and the Rainbow Ride stage in Mario 64, but aside from creepypastas, no significant finds have been made. Skybox Islands. Super Mario 64's original skyboxes are some of my favorites in any video game. Looking at them in this way really shows what Nintendo wanted to do, but couldn't due to the hardware limitations at the time. But if you take a closer look at the skybox for Bob on Battlefield, you can clearly see multiple islands in the distance. Where do those islands go? And can they be accessed in-game? the world may never know. Don't become his lunch. In Hazy Maze Cave, there is a sign in the water area where Dory is located, and the sign reads, "A gentle sea dragon lives here. Pound on his back to make him lower his head. Don't become his lunch." This phrase does come off as being pretty ominous, but I think that this is just a misinterpreted line that was meant to be a cute little end to the text on the sign. Mirror room pillars. Normally, the reflection in the mirror room where Snowman's Land is located mimics Mario's movements perfectly. However, if Mario crawls towards one of the pillars, he will crawl up the side of it while the reflection remains of the floor, breaking the synchronicity of the reflection. HMC is a sewer. There's an ongoing theory about whether or not Hazy Maze Cave is a sewer system. More specifically, Hazy Maze Cave being a sewer system for Peach's castle. I personally think that this is nothing more than speculation, but it is a pretty interesting allegory for the stage. Removed courses. A handful of stages that were shown off in the pre-release footage of the game ended up being scrapped from the finished game. These were also found in the Giga Leak, and they're very similar to the test map from the DS version. The most notable ones were the first and second test maps for the original Super Mario 64. Internal plexus of the castle. A plexus is an interwoven combination of parts or elements in a structure or system. And if we were to apply this to Super Mario 64, it would without a doubt be tied into Peach's castle. The dimensions of it seriously don't make any sense at all. As shown by this video by Skelix, this is what the castle would actually look like if it wasn't for the interior being invisible when Mario is outside of the castle. There's also other theories connected to the plexus, like the 20 feet space in between the stained glass windows of Peach, for example, and I can definitely see how people find the castle's geometry weird. This is probably due to hardware limitations and purposeful creative decisions throughout Nintendo, but the castle really does feel like an art gallery instead of a castle. Luigi is Jesus. In Super Mario 64 DS, if you charge up a running start using Luigi next to water, Luigi comfortably runs across the water for around 2 seconds. You know who else walks on water? Super Mario FX rumor. Super Mario FX is rumored to be the earliest known version of Super Mario 64. Originally developed for the Super Nintendo using the Super FX chip, the FX chip was successfully used in other SNES games like Yoshi's Island and Star Fox. Miyamoto has said in the past that he thought about creating a three-dimensional Mario game during the development of Star Fox, and this had led many people to believe that a Mario game using the Super FX chip could have been in the works for the Super Nintendo, before the existence of the Nintendo 64. But as of right now, these aren't anything more than speculation. Starry Night painting. There is a painting in Super Mario 64 that many people loosely connect to one of the most famous paintings in the world, being Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. People claim that this painting next to the staircase to the 50-star door can have an extremely rare chance to take the player to a hidden stage called the Starry Night Skies. This video from Nova Mario 64 shows off what the stage could look like if it was real, but that's exactly the issue. The stage unfortunately isn't real, but it is a really interesting painting. SMB1 carving. In Bowser in the Sky, if you go to the end of the stage where the 4 pillars are located right before the entrance to Bowser, you might notice something interesting about the pillars themselves. If you take a closer look at the carvings on the pillars, you will notice that the carvings are a direct callback to the original Super Mario Bros. I don't know how I've never noticed this, but you probably might not have known about it either. Shindo version. In July of 1997, Nintendo released a slightly altered version of Super Mario 64, commonly referred to as the Shindo version. This version is best described as an international edition of Super Mario 64, and this Japanese exclusive re-release featured tweaks to the in-game voice lines, as well as this small Easter egg on the title screen, triggered by pressing the Z button. Minus World. Now, I initially thought that this might either be a ROM hack for the game, or maybe a reference to the Minus World in the original Super Mario Bros., but what I think this might be referring to is a group of YouTubers called the Minus World Boys, who did various different video collaborations as well as at one point living in a house together. The group included 9 different Nintendo YouTubers, which included the likes of Nathaniel Bandy, Simple Flips, Swanky Box, and others. Ocarina of Time beta assets in Wet Dry World. Just like with the L is Real plaque in Ocarina of Time, the same thing can be said for assets from the Zelda title inside of Super Mario 64. The biggest example of this comes from Wet Dry World, which only really includes this door texture in the bottom portion of the map. Impossible Coin Metal Wing Cap. Super Mario 64 has multiple coins that are impossible to obtain without external tools like TAS. One of them is from the Mystery Goomba from earlier, and another one is from this coin underneath the ground in Tiny Huge Island. As for the metal cap part though, I have absolutely no idea what the correlation is. I thought that it could be referring to a potential impossible coin in Hazy Maze Cave, where the initial metal cap is, but I couldn't find anything that would insinuate that. Hey guys, editor's note, I didn't realize that I did this, but these two are different entries, so let me really quickly go over the metal wing cap because I know that both of these are right. It's possible to combine the wing cap and the metal cap just like how you can with the vanish and metal cap, but it's only possible through hacking as no level in the game has both caps. Whomp's Fortress Tower 1-Up. After defeating Whomp King, if you go up behind the tower and punch the back of the wall, you might be surprised to find that there's actually a hidden 1-up inside of the tower. Dancing Flowers. The Dancing Flowers is an unused environmental effect in Super Mario 64. This is probably my favorite unused thing from the game, because how could you not like this? Wet Dry World Negative Emotional Aura. Have you ever felt a sense of melancholy while playing Wet Dry World? Have you ever noticed that something is off, but what exactly? If you've ever thought this, you aren't the only one. This is one of the most unique but weirdly designed stages that is directly responsible for creating this emotional aura, and it feels so... I don't even know, it's just so off at times. Another massive factor to this is Wet Dry World's infamous skybox. This skybox really is something special in that it does a really good job of adding onto the uncertainty and uneasiness that people sometimes feel with this level. There are several other videos on YouTube talking about this, but I'm not going to summarize this entry any further. Racing Penguin after 120 stars. After collecting all of the stars, if you return to Cool Cool Mountain to race the penguin again, the penguin is not only much larger than he normally is, but he can now also much more easily knock the player off of the slide, making him a little harder to beat. E.T. in the Pyramid. In Shifting Sandland's Pyramid, if you go to this pillar, there's a hieroglyphic that clearly says E.T. People have tried to form further connections towards other things in the Mario franchise, but I don't think it means anything. Angering the Mother Penguin. After completing the star Lil Penguin Lost, if you try to pick the penguin back up to take it away from the Mother Penguin, she will follow the player with a visibly angered expression on her face until Mario drops the penguin. And if you drop the baby penguin off the edge, the Mother Penguin will try and kill Mario. Ally with info. In Super Mario 64 DS, Toad mentions that there's an ally with info in the mirror room that the player should find, alluding to unlocking Wario. But even with Wario, this dialogue still occurs anyway. What is Toad even referencing here? Whatever Toad is referring to when he says ally with info, it's such a randomly ominous statement. Green Demon Challenge. The Green Demon Challenge is a challenge in which the player has to collect all of the red coins of every level while being chased by a 1-up the entire time. The challenge was popularized by people like Simple Flips and Nathaniel Bandy, and it is a pretty hard challenge to do. Simple Flips even tried to collect every single star in the game, and he actually managed to do it.
Please, 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 please. Please! I got it! I fucking can't believe it! I'm dead! Oh, I fucking did it! Oh my god! I fucking did it! I'm popping off, dude!
Cloning. Discovered by Panenkoic, it is possible to clone other objects in Super Mario 64. For example, grabbing an exploding Bob-omb just as it despawns will allow the held object's memory slot to be overridden, thereby letting Mario hold a copy of a nearby item. This can be used to hold coins, Goombas, and many more items. Panenkoic once again goes into far more detail on just exactly how this glitch is performed, but we need to move on. Diving Penguin. If you perform a dive maneuver near the baby penguin in Cool Cool Mountain, the penguin will adorably replicate your movement by diving onto the ground just as Mario does. The black box. The black box is a theory that involves Waluigi being playable in Super Mario 64 DS. It is unknown who created the theory, but what is certain is that it's definitely not real. The black box refers to a box that is alleged to appear on the castle wall on the starting screen, as well as some other obstructions like an apparent vortex showing up in the game, as well as the castle being fully submerged, for some reason. BLJing to Wet Dry World. In February of 2015, speedrunner Black Chaos 322 was near the end of a run on 16 star when, during the BLJs to get past the infinite staircase, this happened.
What?
It's worth noting that this was an already known BLJ, and that this speedrunner just happened to perform it on accident. M25 Lives. In the Japanese version of the game, there's a glitch where if you manage to collect 1,000 coins in Bowser in the Dark World, Mario's lives will be updated to M25 lives. You can think of the M as a minus sign because your extra life total will act as though it's a negative number. Mario can lose the M in two different ways. One, if you get enough 1-ups to bring your extra life down to M1, the next 1-up you will get will change the total to 0, and 2, if you die enough to bring your lives up to M128, the M will go away the next time you lose a life, making the life total change to 100. Unused Boo text. This unused dialogue by Boo comes right after the first time you enter Big Boo's haunt. This dialogue probably would have been spoken by a Big Boo, but the lack of a scripted event where you would have to follow one through a wall probably is what made this dialogue go unused. Shared nightmares. Shared nightmares is a phenomenon in which many different people claim to have had very similar nightmares related to Super Mario 64. Despite the cheery nature of the Mario franchise, Mario 64 seems to be able to instill a level of horror that no other Mario game can. Whether it be the emptiness of the castle, or the negative emotional aura of Wet Dry World, something about this game makes people experience very similar nightmares. Have you ever had experiences with this? Let me know in the comments. Peach is behind the stained glass window. This one directly ties back to the castle's internal plexus, making a point that there's about 20 feet of space in between the two glass windows of the castle. People have brought up that this area in between the windows could have been where Bowser kept Peach. This is most evident at the end of the game, where players noted that Peach comes out of the stained glass window. Throwing MIPS. I honestly doubt this one being true, but in Super Mario 64's development, Mario was originally able to throw MIPS. The developers had the intent of letting Mario throw him by the ears. This wasn't ever implemented due to the time constraints and internal conflicts related to animal abuse. With that said, I think that this is just a bullshit creepypasta that somebody made, because why the hell would Nintendo ever do something like that? Something that is not only cool but true is that the origin of MIPS as a name came from the MIPS microprocessor, meaning microprocessor without interlocked pipeline stages, which is the instruction set used within the Nintendo 64. MIPS was one of the first characters modeled for Nintendo 64 hardware, and Nintendo staff liked him enough to keep him in the final game. BBH Skybox. Big Boo's haunt has a really fitting but unsettling skybox. I assume this entry is on here because of not only the skybox helping shape the creepy environment, but also because people like to point out that the trees in the skybox kind of look like they resemble pieces of grass. Womp mistreatment. Womps are kind of treated like shit. In Super Mario 64, as well as Super Mario Galaxy 2, Womp King mentions in both of the games how the Womps build the houses, pave the roads, build the castles, and yet they still get walked all over by the residents of the Mushroom Kingdom. Womp King still feels this way all the way into Mario Galaxy 2, implying that relations have not improved in the 14-year-long time span between the two games. The end screen. The cake at the end screen looks absolutely delightful, but this entry refers more to the weird-looking Yoshi face in the background. It definitely is pretty weird-looking, but I don't really think it means much of anything. Fate of the Wet Dry World Town. The town in Wet Dry World is certainly an interesting place, and that begs the question, what happened here? The town is completely deserted, and I could see why that might be. Building a town in an area that can be entirely submerged probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but this entry is more likely referring to this town as more of an open interpretation as to what happened to the town and its people. And to answer the question, I have no idea. Small Chill Bully. The Small Chill Bully is an unused enemy in Super Mario 64, which is just a smaller version of the original enemy, and this is what the smaller one looks like next to the normal-sized one. Fish Splashing Easter Egg. Jumping in shallow water will occasionally make a fish jump out of the water alongside Mario. This can be done with any shallow water in the game. Jolly Roger Bay Box. This box on the sunken ship in Jolly Roger Bay has some really weird damage properties. Sometimes it can only do 1 damage, and sometimes it can do upwards of 4 or 5. Alice in Wonderland. People seem to think that Super Mario 64 has a vague resemblance to the 1951 film Alice in Wonderland. In the beginning of the film, Alice falls through a rabbit hole into a fantasy world of anthropomorphic creatures and skewed architecture. Miyamoto was actually asked about this in an interview in 2005 in which he stated this. It seems there was some misunderstanding, and it's since been stated that I was influenced by Alice in Wonderland. That isn't the case. It's just that there has always somehow been a relationship between mushrooms and magical realms. That's why I decided that Mario would need a mushroom to become Super Mario. Yoshi Racing. Yoshi Racing was a demo game created by Argonaut Games in 1993 after the success of the Super FX chip. The game was similar to Mario Kart 64, which would come out later, and the game would have been the first 3D game using Nintendo's intellectual property. Nintendo ultimately rejected the pitch because they didn't want to take any risks entering an entirely new field with an outside developer. BUP. BUP is a term commonly associated with simple flips deriving from a stretched out texture of Toad's face from the game files. The face is commonly used as a texture replacement for various different joke hacks for the game, as well as generally being a meme within the Mario 64 community. And that concludes Tier 2. Disappearing Race Penguin. For some reason, when you race the penguin in Cool Cool Mountain, if you reload the stage to attempt the race again, the penguin will sometimes never show up at the finish line. What's actually happening here is that the penguin for some reason is just falling off of the track near checkpoint number 27. Mario's Y position over time fully determines the penguin's path on the slide. The penguin's response to small variations in acceleration is highly chaotic, and sometimes you can actually manage to unintentionally make the penguin fall off of the track. Notice how the penguin is still following a path while not actually being on the track anymore. 64 DD version. We've already talked about the failed Nintendo 64 DD console, but the version of Mario 64 that was planned to release on it still has some pretty interesting changes that I haven't talked about yet. The biggest change that I noticed with this version are the changes to the game's music. Blue Flames. If you go to the part of the basement where Mips is located, you might notice that there's blue flames on the wall next to the door where you lower the water. And in the DS version, there's actually a glitch involving the flames, in which if Yoshi grabs a flame with his tongue while doing a flutter jump, Yoshi's tongue will remain extended until you either leave the basement or press the A button. Hopper. The Hopper is an unused enemy found inside of the game files. No animations or behavior code were written for the enemy, and it's likely that the Hopper would have appeared in Snowman's Land, replacing the money bags. Muslim Mosque. We talked about how Wet Dry World Skybox is located in Shabam, Yemen, but what about this piece up here? Well, in March of 2021, the community was finally able to piece it together by finding out that the building at the top of the town is actually the Mosque of Muhammad Ali in Egypt. 25th Anniversary Concept Art. To celebrate the 25th anniversary of the company, Nintendo released an exclusive booklet centered around the history of Super Mario. and a page can be found in the book showing off early concept art for Super Mario 64, with most of it never making it into the final game. Hoot's Egg. Hoot is the name of the owl that appears in Womp's Fortress, and this unused egg, bearing a striking resemblance to a Yoshi egg, can be found as an unused animation found inside of the game files. Based on the evidence in the GigaLeak, it appears that Hoot originally hatched from this egg instead of being in a tree. TTC Upwarp. In 2013, a Twitch streamer by the name of Dota Teabag was doing a star in TikTok clock when out of nowhere, something happened that was a 1 in a trillion chance.
Oh, dude. What the? What the?
Did you get invisible walls?
What?
Please say you got invisible.
No, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen, though.
Panenkoic made a video about this, saying that he would give $1,000 to anyone who is able to record a recreation of it. The current most accepted reason as to why this could have happened is that a single bit flip in the first byte of Mario's height coordinate resulted in this bizarre occurrence. Panenkoic recreated the byte change idea by using a script, and the similarities are pretty clear. It's also believed that a cosmic ray triggered this bit flip inside of the game's data. Area. Yeah, this one is a complete shot in the dark. The best thing I could find about the term area is an area math remix by C418 using the game's sound font, and a YouTuber named Area who made Mario 64 content all the way back in 2012. I have a hard time believing that something this low on the iceberg refers to anything that I found. Miscolored secret slide wall. In the Japanese version of Super Mario 64, this wall piece next to the secret slide entrance is red. Whether this was done intentionally to hint at the secret entrance or not is unknown, but it's probably a mistake considering that the Japanese version is the only version to have it. CCM's theme of loneliness. Apparently people think that Cool Cool Mountain has a hidden theme of loneliness, but I really disagree. This is a very cheery stage with several signs of life all over, friendly or not, so I don't really get this one. Textureless Mario Anomaly. In December of 2018, when making a coin challenge video for Mario 64, SwankyBox started to experience really strange behavior when visiting Tiny Huge Island.
Immediately upon loading the level, the music was just gone. The water wasn't visible either, despite Mario being able to swim in it. But then my game started flickering and the black void crept in. Mario's face melted from his body as he turned into just a flesh-toned husk.
What's even more strange about this is that Simple Flips also experienced this behavior, but his description was almost inverse of the experience that Swanky had with the game. Whatever the hell they did to the game when setting the challenge up, it really didn't seem to like it. Lethal Lava Trouble. For the Question Block Lego set, the specifications on their website for the set refer to Lethal Lava Land as Lethal Lava Trouble. Maybe they were just trying to be creative, but it's pretty clearly labeled incorrectly. Noop Object. The Noop is an object found inside of the cannon in Jolly Roger Bay, with the Noop standing for No Operations. It's unclear what exactly it is, but it was probably something that Nintendo just forgot to remove. Red Koopa. In both of the Mario 64 games, the Red Koopa is an unused enemy that was meant to appear along with the green ones. The original Mario 64 only has the shell in the game files, and the DS version has a full model of a Red Koopa enemy. Sombrero Build. Being one of the earliest known builds of Super Mario 64, this build is nicknamed the Sombrero Build because of the humanoid figure shown in the only known screenshot of the build. This build shows off very alpha levels of game development, and this was likely a testing build for the Ultra 64 hardware. Many of the models associated with the build can be found in the Nintendo 64 creation kits, such as the Sombrero Man. Transforming Butterflies. In Tiny Huge Island, there's a pair of 3 butterflies that can turn into 1-ups as well as bombs. And once again, Panenkoic pretty much completely deconstructed just exactly how these butterflies function. Bob-omb Racism. Posted on the Accidental Racism subreddit in August of 2018, one of the Bob-omb buddies in Mario 64 DS says that they are peace-loving red bombs and that they don't like explosions like the black ones do. Original Secret Slide Room. In the original game, the room containing the secret slide entrance is a small hexagonal room with a sign and 3 stained glass windows of Peach. The DS version replaced this with a much larger room in a separate map, and the original room is actually still a part of the castle model. Complete with the sign and the secret slide warp, the room doesn't feature any collision and also has incorrect textures. This video from Prince Frizzy shows off what the original room would look like in the DS version via a restoration. Forced mental fall theory. I want you to picture in your head Mario from Mario 64 doing something inside of your mind. It can be anything, just whatever the immediate thing that comes to your mind is. Got it? Okay, great. If you pictured Mario falling or even making the falling noise, then you might be prone to this theory. Cabin Proprietor. The cabin proprietor is an implied character in Super Mario 64 who owns the cabin in Cool Cool Mountain. He gladly welcomes Mario and says that anyone may enter through the chimney. I wonder what he could look like. Defeating the Mad Piano. It's technically possible to defeat the Mad Piano in Big Boo's Haunt by using hacks to make the piano despawn. It's about time someone got rid of it. 255 coin limit. Separately from the 999 coin limit, there is an unintentional coin limit involving the saved coin score. This value overflows and is set to 0 if the number of coins Mario collects in a course is a multiple of 256. Panicoic goes into much greater detail in his 30-minute video about it, but I'm obviously not going to cover it all. SM64 isn't optimized. It's no surprise to almost every Mario 64 player that some sections of the game are seemingly unreasonably laggy. But to answer the question of if Super Mario 64 is optimized, well, no. The conclusion here is that Nintendo had a buggy compiler at the time and didn't want to risk breaking their revolutionary 3D Mario title. According to Keiza Manuar, most of the extreme lag in Dire Dire Docks is from the submarine's collision being dynamic instead of static like almost every other object in the game. Keiz actually fixed this problem in his multiplayer mod that we talked about earlier. Mario painting Skybox. The Skybox in Mario's painting from the DS version certainly raises some questions. What is the original image? If someone could show me its origin, I would be really impressed. I think that a good lead would have something to do with Wet Dry World, but anything past that, you're probably gonna have a hard time finding anything. Losing all the petals in Loves Me? This is impossible. It's impossible. Moving on. Where's the castle kitchen? We all know that Peach talks about baking a cake for Mario, but where? There's not a single real living area in the castle, so yeah, where is the castle kitchen? I'm gonna guess here and say that maybe they lost their kitchen when Bowser decided to show up, but I'm sure the Womps could build it. Song of Storms reference. The stars in the Starry Night Sky painting have a really good reference to Ocarina of Time. If you look at the arrangement of the stars, you might notice that it's actually the Song of Storms, and this one is definitely an intentional one. Grabbing Heave-Ho. The Heave-Hos are these enemies in Wet Dry World that shoot you up into the air if you step on them. And in 2018, a player named Bad Boot figured out that you could actually pick him up by abusing water grabbing. You can just kind of hold them until you let them go, and in doing so, Mario gets launched just as he normally would. Boo Key. Shown off in early footage of Super Mario 64, the Boo Key was originally planned to drop from Big Boo, but was ultimately removed from the final game. Based on how it functions when it's restored, it's thought to either open the old chest, or to open the bookshelf by unlocking it using the key. This key also has 4 different color variants which include red, green, blue, and yellow. Escaping Grasp. Unbelievably, it is possible to escape from a Chuckya before being thrown. In September of 2017, Panicoic made a video explaining that the programmers actually put in a feature that allows Mario to escape from Chuckya's grasp before he is able to throw Mario. The way it works is that a Chuckya has a counter that starts at 0 when he grabs Mario. Once Chuckya starts rotating, if you increase the counter to 11 by using certain controller inputs, then you can actually break free before being thrown. Skybox in Got Milk commercial. In 1993, a Got Milk commercial was aired showcasing Mario exiting Wet Dry World through a kid's TV, drinking milk, and then heading back into the stage. I don't know why this entry is so focused on the skybox being different, because the commercial itself is far more interesting. Black Rooms of Death. Nicknamed the Black Rooms of Death, These rooms are referring to the black area behind the doors before the game loads into a new location. These obviously exist due to hardware limitations, and there are 5 of these in the overworld and 1 in Cool Mountain. Purple Rabbit. In the manual of Super Mario 64 DS, there is an image of a purple rabbit that does not appear anywhere in the game. It is often connected to Waluigi due to its color, but this is probably just an early model of one of Mario's pink rabbits. Koopa Shoe Store. I think that this entry is trying to refer to the Koopa's shoes themselves, but attempting to connect this to the real world, I found out that in September of 2020, Nintendo collabed with Puma and released a limited edition Mario 64 35th anniversary shoe. I used to be really into shoes, so I might see if I can get my hands on these. Square eggs. In the DS version, if Yoshi swallows a portable crate, he will end up making a square-shaped egg. Running the game at a higher resolution allows us to see it in much better quality. What do power stars do? I've always thought that this was really obvious, because for one, we've seen time and time again that the stars clearly function as a sort of power source, and 2, it's literally called a power star. Maybe this entry could be referring to its interpretation, but I digress. Super Mario 63. Super Mario 63 is an unofficial 2D Mario game created by Renown in June of 2009. The game was uploaded on Newgrounds and is still playable to this day. The game was initially intended to be playable on the Wii on WiiCade, but was denied by Nintendo for IP-related reasons. Spring. This is referring to the unused trampoline item, which acted the exact same way as a Super Spring. This object looks like it could have appeared in something like Wet Dry World, but was unfortunately abandoned early on in the game's development. HMC is a dungeon. I don't know about you, but Hazy Maze Cave really doesn't scream dungeon to me. I could understand the correlation to a dungeon being underground as well as this, but this map really doesn't remind me of a dungeon. I think that Nintendo just wanted to have an underground stage in the game. Empty file deletion crash. If you try to delete an empty save file, the game doesn't really know what to do, and so it just crashes the game entirely. So if you wanted to crash your game as fast as possible, this would definitely be the way to do it. Ocean animations. Ocean is an unused animation in which Mario covers his face. Ocean translates to nausea, so it might have been activated when Mario got nauseous, and this could have been potentially implemented in places like the Poisonous Maze, or maybe the ship in Jolly Roger Bay. Big Bob-omb is a hypocrite. Big Bob-omb sort of implies that in order to beat him, you have to throw him off of the top of the mountain. But when you do that, he just comes back and says that Mario's not allowed to do that. I'm sure that Nintendo purposefully did this so that the player could fight him in a controlled space, but King Bob-omb should probably choose his words more carefully. Behind the Silver Door. The mystery behind the Silver Door has been the biggest mystery in the DS version ever since the game was released in November 2004. And for over 18 years, all everyone could do was just guess. Until now. Oh, it's just a power star? Well, that explains that. Third JRB ship. There is a third copy of the ship in Jolly Roger Bay located above the other two, which is only around during the first star and cannot be normally seen without either viewing it in a level editor or using a GameShark code. The ship has no collision data and is programmed to fade the closer Mario gets to the ship. Ninja Mario. The Ninja power-up was a power-up that was rumored to be removed from Super Mario World. But as for its connection to Super Mario 64, I don't think there is one. Blizzard. The Blizzard was an unused, faster version of the Snowfall animation, and it is purely aesthetic and interacts with Mario in the same way as normal snowflakes do. The effect in the source code is also referred to as Blizzard, spelled with an E. Can you hear the princess calling? When Mario collects 8 stars, a message shows up on the screen telling the player that he can open the 8-star door. But along with that comes the line, "Can you hear the princess calling?" This is once again just a way for Nintendo to try and incentivize the player to progress, that is, if the player doesn't just scroll right past it. And that concludes Tier 3. Mangas. Various different Mario manga were released in Japan in 1996, and the back of the manga has a nice reference to the cake that is made for Mario. Assets in New Super Mario Bros. DS. Several different assets from New Super Mario Bros. DS come right from Super Mario 64. Notable examples include the swing from Rainbow Ride, the treasure chest, and the red switch. Donkey Kong reference. 25 years after the game's release, somebody discovered that some of the notes in the intro to Super Mario 64 sound exactly like the signature notes in the original Donkey Kong game. He put the notes into GarageBand, and upon speeding them up, the similarities immediately become clear. This is what it sounds like. Frame walking controversy. Frame walking is a speedrunning trick which involves holding in an uphill direction on the analog stick for a frame, then hold to neutral for a frame, and repeat until you're high enough to grab the star. You can probably see why speedrunners didn't like this trick very much. Speedrunners opted to use a controller remapper because while doing this without it is possible without it, it's just so terrible to perform. The trick saves 5 seconds, which is huge, but this isn't why it's so controversial. Frame walking was controversial because it potentially welcomed the idea of using controller remappers in other areas of the game in the future. And banning the ability to use a controller remapper would also require rewriting the rules for 120 Star. Giant red F. If you stand between the left and middle paintings in the Cool Cool Mountain room and use first person to look through the wall, there's a massive red F floating out of bounds behind the wall. This is actually the entrance to Bowser in the Dark World. 8th Demo. The 8th demo is an unused demo that is missing its defining headline. There's a lot of speculation as to which level this could have been for, but it's generally accepted that this 8th demo was originally intended for Cool Cool Mountain. Reino Aventura. Reino Aventura was a theme park in Mexico City which included attractions themed around Super Mario 64. The only 2 attractions it had was Peach's Castle and the House of Mario, which is just the castle foyer. SSL Unused Cutscene. There is an unused cutscene for Shifting Sandland in which the camera would do this when opening the pyramid. Out of Bounds Lava Bubbles. In Bowser in the Dark World, for some reason, there is a flame that just sits underneath the stage. The flame is supposed to warp to a specific location, but it just doesn't. And so it just sits out there in the void. Cheating in the THI race. Normally, you're not supposed to be able to cheat while racing Koopa the Quick, but in Tiny Huge Island, you can cheat like an absolute madman. You can literally just use the wing cap and fly all the way to the finish line in 20 seconds flat. Bob River. There was once supposed to be a river in Bob on Battlefield, but it was apparently removed due to having too strong of a current and making the difficulty way too hard way too early on in the game. Invisible Arrow Sign. In the slide in Tall Tall Mountain, there's a small rectangular wall at the top of the back of the first tunnel. There actually used to be a sign there in the beta version, but it has since been turned invisible. Monkey Time Stop Glitch. Whenever Mario either reads a sign or interacts with an enemy, everything becomes frozen in place, and this can actually be completely broken by using the monkey. If you dive at the monkey to pick him up at just the right time, he will take Mario's hat to trigger the dialogue for when Mario touches the ground. But since Mario instead lands in the water, it doesn't trigger the cutscene. And if you manage to let him go in the water by either dropping him or going off of the waterfall, then all of the game's attributes will be completely frozen. It's worth noting that once this is done, you are completely unable to interact with any of the things that froze. Peach's Balcony. In the rec room in the DS version, there is a window that very clearly has a balcony on it. The obvious problem with this is that there is not a single balcony anywhere on the castle. Pony Canyon. Pony Canyon is the name of the company who published Mario 64's original soundtrack onto CDs. Yoshi throwing animation glitch. In the DS version, if you go to a course with an enemy that makes you twirl when you jump on it, if you throw an egg just before you land on the enemy, then Yoshi will twirl in the air without extending his arms. Yellow pipe on box art. For some reason, the box art for Mario 64 DS has a yellow pipe on the ground even though it never shows up in either of the games. Broken textures in Rainbow Ride. The textures for the rotating platforms in Rainbow Ride have very misaligned textures, I guess? I'm not at all confident with this, but let's just assume that this is correct. So it is true that there's a monster that eats naughty kids. If Yoshi eats a baby penguin, this is the usual message that gets displayed. But there's a second, much more unsettling message that says this. There is no known way to activate this message in the game. Big Boo sound when you kick the Bowser picture. So apparently if you kick one of the Bowser paintings, the Big Boo sound is supposed to play. But unless this is talking about the other Bowser painting downstairs, this is just not true. Backlight toggle. The DS version of Mario 64 has a setting that turns the brightness all the way down. This might not be needed anymore, but the reason it's there is because the original DS only had two options for lighting, on and off. Who does Yoshi have a crush on? Who does Yoshi have a crush on? Well, I have the answer. The answer is Birdo. Defective Karampa balls. Karampa balls are these black balls that shoot out fire whenever Mario gets close to them. And in Wet Dry World, two of these in the town area are deemed completely broken due to an internal design flaw. SM64's world is flooded. The Flooded Castle event is alleged to be a scrapped story event in which, if activated, the castle would become completely flooded. As far as proposed events go, this one almost sounds like it could have been in the game at some point. Reimagined build. In 2013, rumors spread around about how Nintendo was going to remake 7 Nintendo 64 games for the Wii U, and the first game in the lineup was going to be Super Mario 64. The only thing I could find about this are fan-made soundtracks for the remakes, so unless this is something completely different, I'm pretty sure this is fake. Employee photographs in game files. In the Shindo version of Super Mario 64, 3 images of an unknown employee can be found inside of the game files. Whether this employee intentionally snuck himself into the game is unknown. Racing Penguin Waypoint 27. As mentioned earlier, the Racing Penguin has a very slim chance to spaz out and fall right off the track. And if you were paying attention, you would know that this rather unpredictable event occurs near waypoint number 27 of the track. SM64 is inside of Donkey Kong Country 3. When you visit Wrinkly Kong in Donkey Kong Country 3, if you listen closely to the TV, then you might hear something rather interesting. CCM and Slider are the same theme. This one is potentially coincidental, but the melodies for both Cool Cool Mountain and Slider are extremely similar to each other. Sound font in other media. A sound font is a brand name that collectively refers to a file format and associated technology that uses sample-based synthesis to play MIDI files. And in Mario 64's case, this can be seen all over the internet. It originated in February 2017 when somebody named Pablo's Corner released the sound font for Super Mario 64. And the sound font can be used to make any MIDI file sound just like Mario 64. Heaven's Portal. In the DS version, if you position yourself just right in the cannon, then it'll bug out and shoot the player all the way to the top of the stage, which is part of where the glitch's name comes from. 15th puzzle piece. The Bowser puzzle in Lethal Lava Land should contain 16 pieces, right? Well, yes, but taking into account the star marker on the top right, what about this one? What reason would Nintendo have to purposefully leave out this corner piece? Well, the answer lies within someone at Nintendo and obsessive-compulsive disorder. When looking at the puzzle from the top-down view, it's pretty clear that the designers wanted to simply maintain the symmetry of the other side. Mario's face. When the DS version of the game was being developed, there was a test demo shown at E3 of 2004 that included a rather unsettling demo of Mario's face. The demo has never been shown since and is currently missing. Mechanical sound in the waterfall. The waterfall outside of the castle has one giant mystery. Have you ever gone up to it and just listened to the sound? Whatever the noise coming from the waterfall is, you can clearly hear a thud noise over and over again. Virtual Console PEGI 12+ rating. Mario 64 DS is one of 2 Mario games given a rating of 12 by PEGI. What about this game would warrant a rating of 12? Well, Mario 64 DS is considered to have the most mature content in the Mario series due to Luigi's minigames encouraging gambling to children. Out of Bounds Butterfly. On July 6th, 2020, a player named Josh October 16 somehow managed to discover something almost completely invisible. He was playing Mario 64 as normal until he noticed something weird outside of the level's boundaries. Can you spot it? Here, let me point to it. Still don't see it? What about from this angle? Well, if you haven't noticed, Josh was somehow able to find a butterfly. The only modification that was made to the game was to improve the graphics, and even the dev who's responsible for the mod has no idea what could have made that butterfly get there. Flooding Tall Tall Mountain. Go into Tall Tall Mountain on the DS version and grab onto the owl on any star with the owl present. When you get above the mushrooms with the red coins, let go of the owl to fall onto the ground below. And then all you have to do is jump to the warp mushroom. And if everything is done right, it will trigger this. Canonless depends on star rotation. It doesn't. This is not true. Ghost in the CCM skybox. There is a ghost hidden inside of this skybox, and you probably won't be able to unsee it after I show it to you. If you don't see it, try looking in the bottom right. Now, this is another case of our pattern-loving brains doing what they do best. But is it really? Games Master Incident. In 1996, during Season 6 of the British show Games Master, the show hosted a gaming contest between contestants Kirk Ewing and Dave Perry. The challenge involved the slide on Cool Cool Mountain, and the rules were simple. Both contestants get one turn at completing the course, and whoever either gets the farthest or completes the course will win the game. And let's just say Dave didn't really handle it too well.
Your time begins now. And off Dave goes. Okay, he's down the slippery slope there. We're just coming up to the first turn here. Again, now it is intact there, Dave. Some might say cowardly, some might say clever. He is literally staying on his bottom and trying to last as long as he can. But I don't think it's smart. He tries to play conservative. A good tactic, but he lasts for 13.35 seconds. That means Kirk Ewing is the winner.
Well, I think I've been set up fairly badly here today.
Right. And in particular, what reason?
I think having a final game where one player owns the game in the machine and one player doesn't isn't in the interests of fair play.
Uh-huh. Okay then, so what you're saying, Dave, is the biggest game of this year. You haven't played much.
Aging Card NTR. The Aging Card NTR is a debug cartridge for testing the Nintendo DS. These debuggers feature some pretty scary visuals, and there are only 2 known cartridges in existence. Miyamoto questioned his son's intelligence. In 1995, Miyamoto invited his son to come and playtest the prototype for Super Mario 64. Miyamoto allegedly questioned his son's intelligence after he apparently tried to climb an unscalable wall over and over again. Maybe his son really did do this by accident, but he may have also done it intentionally to find out if it's actually climbable. Mario 64 2 became Mario 64 DS. Super Mario 64 2 was the only thing made for the short-lived Nintendo 64 DD. Could it be that the failed version of Mario 64 ended up becoming the handheld version we all know and love? Could it be that Nintendo bit off more than they could chew and decided to recycle it into a handheld experience? Censored theory. In the original Mario 64 Iceberg, there is an entry on the 3rd tier that has seemed to have been completely covered up. There's been a lot of speculation as to what this could even be, and in May of 2020, a group of fan programmers were actually Well, you've made it to the end of the video. I don't really have that much to say, but what I do have to say is important. Also, I hope the bit that I just did wasn't too corny, but I'm just going to roll with it, and I hope I didn't scare any of you guys too badly. The good news is that I finally set up my Patreon, so you guys should totally go financially support me over there. The tiers don't really give that much, admittingly, because I just don't really know what I would do aside from the things that are already on there. Private videos, insight on video projects, you know, that sort of shit. Again, I'm not really too familiar with having a Patreon and running a Patreon, but I have it now, and I fully set it up, so if you want to support me, I would greatly appreciate it. Another thing I want to mention is that I'm honestly pretty impressed with myself that I managed to not only make a longer video than the history of the hardest demon, but also one that's not even related to GD. Like, seriously, I never thought I would do that, and this is kind of like a personal goal for me as well. I weirdly felt like I needed to prove to myself that I was capable of making videos that were long and informative that weren't only GD. But I don't know. I'm just really relieved that the video is over. This took nearly a month straight from start to finish, and I can't believe I did it, honestly. I might make another one, but I'm probably going to take like a month or a month and a half off, at least making long content. If I do make anything, it's going to be smaller. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed making it. And if you did enjoy it, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video with a couple friends. It really means a lot to me. Peace.